I'm Lance Lysowski, the Sabres beat writer for the Buffalo News. We have a trade to talk about. The Sabres sent Matt Savoie, one of their top prospects to the Edmonton-Oilers, for center Ryan McLeod, who I'm sure some of you have watched in the Stanley Cup Final, with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, as well as right winger Tyler Tullio, who will be in Rochester, a throw-in to the deal. This is really about Matt Savoie and Ryan McLeod. We all know the Sabres were very hesitant to trade a prospect like Matt Savoie. They refused to part with him or Yuri Kulik in 2023 when the Arizona Coyotes were shopping Jacob Chychrun. Times have changed though. Urgency has changed, expectations have changed. Missing the playoffs caused Kevin Adams to change his approach when it came to that prospect pool. And the most recent draft, just a couple weeks ago at this point, also altered their perspective, their willingness to make this type of move. Konsta Helenius, the Finnish center the Sabres drafted, I expect him to be in Rochester next year. And when you have Helenius, Noah Ostlund, Yuri Kulik, Isak Roseyan, Anton Wahlberg, add in Victor Neuchev, somebody like Savoie became expendable. Now, we could talk about this trade on two fronts. At first, I want to address the Savoie part of it because I was brought on Edmonton radio shortly after the deal, and they couldn't believe or understand why the Sabres would part with Savoie. And if you just looked at Hockey DB elite prospects, of course, you wouldn't have the context. You wouldn't really understand the full picture here. But injuries have been an issue for Matt Savoie. Nothing significant, of course, but it's just been one minor sort of ailment after another that has really slowed his progress at times, prevented him from making the NHL roster this past season. And remember, Matt Savoie injured his elbow and his shoulder on a hit in the finale of the Rookie Prospect Challenge back in September. If that doesn't happen, he probably makes the Sabres roster. Zach Benson returns to junior, and we're talking about a different type of trade today. But Savoie has to go back to the Western Hockey League, average 2 points per game in the regular season, led his team to a WHL championship. They reached the Memorial Cup. He was going to be a winger in Rochester, though, based on the other centers in the pipeline, plus you look at Moose Jaw, the way they used Savoie the last couple of games of their season, he was on the wing. Braden Yeager, the top prospect of the Pittsburgh Penguins, was their best center. Savoie played the wing. He's almost NHL ready. This is going to be difficult to stomach if he does end up on Edmonton's roster at some point this season. The only thing, in my opinion, that's holding Matt Savoie back is physically. Is he going to be strong enough to win puck battles, to find time and space? We saw how challenging it was for him in that very short, small sample size, 3+ minutes in Buffalo. And you go back to the playoffs with Rochester last spring, he's going to be a good player. I'm not betting against him. The Sabres, their scouts, their development coaches, Kevin Adams, they love Matt Savoie. So I understand how difficult it was for them to part with a player like this. It's just that they feel, let's say, for example, there's an injury in the top 6 this year. Based on their own internal evaluations, they feel that somebody like Yuri Kulik is ahead of Matt Savoie. Isak Roseyan may even be ahead of Matt Savoie at this point, based on their internal projections. So based on the way they want to play, the urgency to win now, they don't feel like they can, if they're going to move a prospect, this is somebody they're more comfortable with moving. And they're adding a very interesting player here. I know if you look at sheer production, points and goals, of course, for Ryan McLeod, it's not going to stand out. If you look at the underlying numbers, though, how he was used, the face-off success, really getting the most, helping his line mates achieve more, Ryan McLeod is the third-line center for the Buffalo-Sabres. He is the replacement for Casey Mittelstadt, a much cheaper replacement, a $2.1 million cap hit for this coming season. He's a restricted free agent, in the summer of 2025. So if this does work out, he may have to be paid as much as the Sabres decided not to give Casey Mittelstadt. That is a problem they hope to have a year from now, of course, and then they will have perhaps Yuri Kulik ready for the NHL, Konstantinovich is ready for the NHL. So it's a different conversation at that point if this does work out. The Sabres are not concerned about that potential dilemma. They need to get into the playoffs. There is an urgency to win now. Ryan McLeod certainly solidifies their depth chart down the middle, which they had to do. If you looked at their depth chart after unrestricted free agency, they were really going to rely on Peyton Krebs to take a step and Sam Lafferty to hold down that fourth line center role, despite not really having played that position in the NHL prior to the past 2 seasons. And although Lafferty won 51% of his faceoffs in 22-23 between Chicago and Toronto, that number took a hit this past season in Vancouver, where he wasn't used in a shutdown role, wasn't on the penalty kill a whole lot. So adding McLeod gives them a few options here. Now, he is their third line center. But let's say in the middle of a game, Lindy Ruff feels he needs somebody else on the left wing next to Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins because of matchups. You could move McLeod up. He played very well on the wing next to Leon Draisaitl in Edmonton. So this is one of the fastest forwards in the NHL based on skating speed, if you go by the NHL's tracking data. He could play next to elite players. He could center a line. He can play a defensive role. He can kill penalties, one of the best penalty killers in the NHL last season. So if that were to happen mid-game, then Peyton Krebs can move up. Lafferty can move to center. If McLeod stays as your third-line center, Peyton Krebs and Sam Lafferty could be on the fourth line, and they could take faceoffs depending on handedness. Krebs is left-handed. Lafferty's right-handed. That is a strategic weapon for a coach to have when you're talking about winning faceoffs. That is a huge focus for Lindy Ruff as he takes over as head coach. The Sabres were 32nd in the league last year. Ryan McLeod was above 50%. Sam Lafferty has the ability to be above 50%. We've seen growth from Krebs and Cousins in that area, and that needs to even improve. Especially as Cousins, they're trying to get more out of him offensively, and Krebs, he's got to earn a spot on this team. This creates competition by adding Ryan McLeod. It adds more of a experienced, sure thing at a very important position for this team. McLeod, 4 goals in 24 playoff games. You see what he did on the penalty kill for the Oilers, though, and he was shut down. And when it comes to the penalty kill, even though the Sabres made significant improvement in that area last year, under Marty Wilford, who is back as an assistant coach and coaching the defense, this really indicates that Lindy Ruff would prefer to not use Tage Thompson on the penalty kill, and perhaps even Alex Tuch to keep Tuch fresh to contribute on the power play and even strength. We'll see Jordan Greenway on the penalty kill, but if the minutes get into an uncomfortable place for Greenway in a game, they have more options that they can use. I think we saw, not only from Greenway, but perhaps even Dylan Cousins, overuse really impacted their ability to play their game at even strength. So having more options to use on the penalty kill, more established, experienced, proven options, as a coach, it gives Lindy Ruff an ability to change personnel based on where your lineup is at, where ice time is at, where usage is at. And when you have a coach who's very experienced, who understands how to leverage matchups, how to make in-game adjustments, that's when players like McLeod, Lafferty, Aube-Kubel, Mallenstein become so valuable. Now, I understand the concern about McLeod when it comes to statistical production. You would like to see them add goal scorers, right? You look at Ryan McLeod, Jason Zucker, and Sam Lafferty in particular. These are double-digit goal guys, but none of the three have produced more than 14 goals last season. Now, Zucker's a couple years removed from being a 20-goal guy, and he's done that several times in his NHL career, but when you're talking about losing Jeff Skinner, walking away from Casey Middlestad in that trade for Bowen Byram, the Sabres need goal scorers. They need somebody to put the puck in the net, and they feel that Zucker and McLeod, they can produce more in these circumstances with their potential line mates. The fact of the matter is, though, the Sabres are betting on their core. Now, these are the guys they paid. These are the guys that they chose to build around. Tage Thompson, Dylan Cousins, Alex Tuck, JJ Peterka, Jack Quinn, and we'll see about Zach Benson. In an ideal scenario, he doesn't get rushed into the top 6, but his ability defensively, what he does in the forecheck, is going to earn him those minutes, that opportunity, that ice time. So we'll see how it all shakes out. You could look at this lineup right now, and that bottom 6 is so much better than it was a couple months ago. They're deeper. There's more playoff-like skill sets. Because when you're talking about a playoff team, guys, it's about roles, where the guys fit. And when you're such a younger team like the Sabres were last season, the year before, you had too many young guys who didn't know what roles they filled. And, Don Granato, to his credit, he helped bring clarity to where guys can fit, moving forward. Is Peyton Krebs somebody who could play on the power play? Nah, from where he stands, the reps that he's given, you could just tell by the Sabres' moves that there's not enough confidence there. So they go out, they get other players. Can Jack Quinn kill penalties? He can now based on the experience he got under Granato. So that helps, but adding players like McLeod then frees up Lindy Ruff to use players more at even strength or more on the power play. And those are 2 areas they need to produce more in next season. So McLeod, great skater, fits a lot of what the Sabres have also brought in this offseason, but he's not that really physical player that, you get from Malenstein or Lafferty. McLeod, one of his criticisms in Edmonton was he didn't get to the front of the net more. So it's going to be interesting to see where he fits. A really good rush player. He's going to win faceoffs. He's going to be difficult to play against defensively. So we'll see how the rest of the roster shakes out. But even after the Savoie trade, as I'll repeat, Sabres still have Kulik in Rochester, Roseanne, Noah Ostlund. Likely Konstantinius is going to be signed and brought over to play with the Amerks, which gives them another almost NHL-ready center that they could bring up if needed. The big question everybody's asking themselves, though, after this latest trade is who's going to score goals. Because, Savoie was one of those prospects who people thought might be able to jump into that top 6, based on competition in training camp and whatnot. But McLeod's a bigger player, 6'2", fits with where this roster is now, and somebody they feel that they can get signed and be here longer term at a certain point if this all works out. I'm Lance Isosky from the Buffalo News. There's going to be plenty of analysis as we dig through this roster, the depth chart, where players fit. We're still a couple of months away from Lindy Ruff's first training camp back as coach, so we'll start to get a little bit more clarity once they get on the ice, of course. Until then, though, where do they look how do things look on the wing, defense? That still feels like an unsettled area even after they signed Henry Jokiharju to a 1-year contract. Plenty to dig into. I'm Lance Isosky, the Buffalo News. Have a great holiday weekend. Take care.